Hello and welcome to everyone joining us today. Good evening to those of you who are dialing in from Asia. Good morning to those of you who are in the Western Hemisphere. And good afternoon to those of you who are Europe and elsewhere in between. My name is Kate Logan. I serve as the Associate Director of Climate at the Asia Society Policy Institute, and we're really thrilled to have a full program for you today focused on the opportunities of accelerating action toward net zero emissions in Asia, which features 4 members of a new high-level policy commission on getting Asia to net zero that we're also publicly launching today as part of this event. But first, it's my honor to start by introducing the President and CEO of Asia Society and also the President of the Asia Society Policy Institute, the Honourable Kevin Rudd. And you may better know him as the 26th Prime Minister of Australia, or perhaps as a leading international scholar and authority on China, who recently published a book called The Avoidable War. And Mr. Rudd has demonstrated leadership across a wide variety of areas over the years, but I do want to specifically highlight his experience and leadership in the climate arena. When Kevin became Prime Minister in 2007, his very first act in office was to ratify the Kyoto Protocol in 2007. And he also legislated in 2008 for a 20% mandatory renewable energy target for Australia. The following year, he played a really prominent leadership role at the Copenhagen Summit, which for the first time, as many of you may know, committed states to limit temperature increases to 2 degrees Celsius compared to pre-industrial levels, establishing for the first time that temperature limit that's been so crucial to driving climate action going forward. And he also participated in COP21, which gave rise to the Paris Agreement, which reiterated this target and moved the goalposts even further by pushing parties to limit warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius. So with that, I'll hand it off to Kevin, who will provide an introduction of our keynote speaker here today. Kevin, please take it away.
Thanks very much, Kate, and good morning, good afternoon, good evening to all of you joining from around the world who are passionate about the need to get climate action done. And I'm so pleased today to be joined by this great group of leaders, Ban Ki-moon, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, Chatib Basri, former Finance Minister of Indonesia, and my good friend also, Taro Kono, former Foreign Minister and Defence Minister, among other positions in the government of Japan. But turning first to our keynote speaker, the former UN Secretary General. Ban Ki-moon became the 8th Secretary General of the UN, served between 2007 and 2016. Ki-moon, I remember you coming to my office when you were a candidate in the lead up to 2007. And we did offer you our bipartisan support for your candidature. And we're glad that we did, because you did become the Climate Change Secretary General. One of your first initiatives, major initiatives on the climate front, was to steer our way through COP13 in Bali and to launch this concept of common but differentiated responsibilities. And then working with you, I remember very clearly at Copenhagen in 2009, where there were many setbacks, but there were many advances as well in the Copenhagen Accord of that year, and our agreement to keep temperature increases under 2 degrees centigrade. And of course, that paved the way for what I think is your most significant achievement as Secretary General, which was to preside over what we were able to bring about in Paris in 2015. And the Paris Agreement, frankly, sets the framework for where we are today. And so, Secretary General Ban Ki-moon, it's so good to have you with us. Of course, since you finished as Secretary General at the end of 2016, you've continued your work on climate-related initiatives. You're currently the President and Chair of the Global Green Growth Institute, an intergovernmental organisation that aims to promote a growth paradigm that balances economic development and environmental sustainability. You also serve as Chairman of the International Olympic Committee Ethics Commission, Deputy Chair of the Elders, an independent group of global leaders established by President Nelson Mandela. And I've got to say, personally, I'm absolutely delighted that you've come to join our high-level policy commission on getting Asia to zero. As a member of our commission, I thoroughly welcome your participation. And I now turn to you, Ki-moon, to give us your thoughts on how Asia can get to net zero and play our part in sustaining the planet. Over to you, Ban Ki-moon.
Well, thank you very much for your very kind introduction, President Kevin Rudd of Asia Society, and also a chairman of this very important net to zero, to getting Asia net to zero. I'm also honored and pleased to be part of this as a commissioner of this very important initiative. And you and I have been working very closely, and you have been very strong champion in moving all other leaders. You mentioned about our meeting in Copenhagen. Copenhagen has some lot of things to talk about. During my 50 years of diplomatic life, I think that's the place where I felt a lot of disappointment and devastated. I was, sort of diplomatically. But from Copenhagen, I think we rose and we were even united, even stronger. And your contribution, I always appreciate very much. And I'm also very pleased to see a former Finance Minister of Indonesia, His Excellency Muhamad Chatib Basri, and also Excellency Taro Kono, former Foreign Minister and Defense Minister of Japan, with whom I worked very closely again. And I thank you very much for your leadership again. And Ms. Kay Logan, thank you very much for your introduction again. And first of all, allow me to express my appreciation for the great privilege of addressing you during this launch event of the High-Level Policy Commission on Getting Asia to Net Zero. I'd also like to thank all the commissioners for the reception extended to Dr. Frank Rees-Berman, who is a Director General of the GGGI, who participated on behalf of me because of my inavailability at the time. And I was informed and briefed by Dr. Frank Rees-Berman how important and how good discussions he had. As a president of the Global Green Growth Institute, I was briefed by on the outcomes of the discussions last week, and I'm pleased that with the overall directions. As all of you can probably guess, the Paris Climate Change Agreement is one of the most often-cited achievements of the United Nations, during which time I was serving as a Secretary General. And thank you very much, Kevin, for your very kind recognition about my role at that time. But I don't claim that it was only my role. I think all the leaders, and particularly your role, has always been very much appreciated. Needless to say, I was very proud of this agreement myself, because it was really very hard-earned, achieved by overcoming great odds, significant opposition, and last-minute obstacles. I'm proud of the agreement because, more importantly, it provides the world with a clear game plans for tackling global warming and for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, which gave rise to net zero. Though it has been 7 years since the adoption of the Paris Climate Change Agreement, it is very regrettable that we have yet to fully utilize these game plans. Too many of the world's leaders instead still argue by pointing their fingers towards others' emissions and responsibilities, by stubbornly clinging to historical emissions of a bygone era, or by hiding behind other countries and other competing interests and urgent needs, such as the COVID-19 pandemic and even recent invasion of Ukraine by Russia. In fact, I have been criticizing countries like the United States and European Union by diverting this fund, which have been earmarked for climate. Now they are going to Ukraine. Of course, Ukrainian people deserve very strong support from the international community, but that should not be done at the sacrifice of climate funding. And I would not suggest that these are valid reasons or real challenges, of course. But let us make no mistake about the facts and the current state of affairs. Our planet is clearly telling us that things are not sustainable, that we are almost too late, and it does not care who is more responsible, or if there are other competing interests or urgent need. Climate change does not care where you are living. So it is all of our common responsibilities. It cares only that global emissions have caused temperatures to rise and that it needs to be reduced significantly and urgently. Most historians agree today that the world's 4 oldest human civilizations started in China, the Indus Valley, Mesopotamia, and Egypt. 3 out of 4 civilizations having been in Asia. Today, more than half of these global emissions come from Asia, unfortunately. But Asian economies are just as vulnerable to the negative effects of climate change, which they are acutely experiencing now in South Asia and elsewhere in Asia. No matter how big or how wealthy or how long ago we rooted ourselves in the world, we are all impacted by climate change. We need to help our leaders view climate ambitions not as a stifling development, but as opportunities for benefits. They need to understand that not only does climate change have negative economic effects, such as destroyed agriculture, severe floods and droughts, and loss of biodiversity, there could be very significant positive economic effects as a result of ambitious climate action. Getting a head start in the green transition can lead to trade and economic benefits, improved health as a result of cleaner air, water, and land. Could mean less spending on public health and welfare. The adoption of renewable energy and industries could lead to green jobs as well as reduced dependency on fossil fuel imports and much more. As the biggest continent in terms of geography, population, and greenhouse gas emissions, it is only natural that the world will look to Asia when it comes to politics, economics, and now the climate crisis. With the G20 summit that will take place in Asia this year, 2022, and 2023, as well as COP28 that will take place in Abu Dhabi next year, the eyes of the world are naturally on Asia all the more. In other words, Asia has a unique opportunity to lead the world, starting with revisiting and strengthening climate targets by the end of 2022, as agreed to during COP26 in Glasgow, United Kingdom. To take advantage of this opportunity for Asia, Asian countries that have a common understanding of the potential benefits of climate action should unite their voices and elevate their common interests and goals. Asian government should revisit and align the midterm climate targets and long-term strategies in line with 1.5 degrees Celsius, and Asian leaders should seek to develop policies and concrete implementation roadmaps. And there are many tools and opportunities we can explore and develop. For example, Article 6 of the Paris Climate Change Agreement supports the transfer of emissions reductions between countries and the carbon trading platform in development by GGGI, where 21 out of 43 member countries are in Asia and in the Middle East, could be a very useful tool for intra-Asia carbon trading. GGGI has partnered with the International Solar Alliance in India to deploy 1 million solar pump irrigation systems in Asia in order to help increase farm incomes, make energy more efficient, and facilitate climate-smart agricultural practices. While these are just two of many tools and opportunities to be explored, the sheer size and scale of Asia means that even a few initiatives such as these could equate to very significant global emission reductions and bring considerable benefits to a great portion of the world's population. Lastly, the elephant in the room, or lack thereof, is China's absence from ambitious discussions for emissions reductions, including from this Commission. As the single largest emitter of greenhouse gases today, China's role will be critical if Asia is to achieve net zero, and it will certainly affect the work of this Commission. As you can see, we have lots of work to do, and it will not be easy. I understand that you've been trying, that you have been informed by Chinese government quietly that they are not yet ready. We may, to my mind, we may need to wait several months after President Xi Jinping gets his third term. When it is finalized, I think then we may actively engage China so that they can get on board with us. And that's my personal thinking, since Kevin, you have such a great, you enjoy great respect from Chinese people. And I also have some good connections as I'm working as a chairman of the Power Forum. And I've been working very closely with President Xi Jinping and also Prime Minister Li Keqiang and most of the Chinese leaders. So let's work together. I'm ready to join my hands. Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, as I have said many times before, there is no plan B because we don't have plan B. This has been very famously repeated, is a slogan which I have been speaking out. And the alternative to inaction now will be far worse and more costly later. We need to work together urgently to make the world a better place for future generations. I think that this is our moral responsibility if you are not in political responsible positions. So let's work together. I'm ready to work with you. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ki Moon, for those excellent remarks. And thank you for your continued leadership around the world on this question. In summary, you reminded us of the fact that 4 of the ancient continuing civilizations in the world, 3 come from Asia, And depending on our definition of Egypt, maybe Egypt almost from Asia. Secondly, the fact that Asia collectively represents some 4 billion members of the 7 billion members of the human family on the planet means that we in Asia carry a particular responsibility for the future and securing a sustainable future. You reminded us of the excellent work of the Global Green Growth Institute, the GGGI, the triple GI, and the importance of carbon trading within Asia. It's an area of work, Ki-moon, where the Asian Society is also working on emissions trading system design with various countries in Asia, China, Japan, South Korea among them, in order to achieve linkage between the emerging carbon markets of Asia. And finally, you correctly remind us that China is not yet around this table with us, and it is very much a missing voice. And certainly the door will always remain open to our Chinese friends, because without China's action as the world's largest emitter by far, both in current terms and before too many years in cumulative terms on greenhouse gas emissions, we do need China. So, my friend, if you can keep your work going in Beijing, I'll keep my lines open to Beijing. Let's try and get a Chinese representative around this commission's table soon. I do understand, Ki-moon, that you have other commitments, and I fully understand if you must leave us now. But thank you once again for your great welcoming remarks.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. I wish you continued success, and let's work together. I'm ready. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
And Kate, back to you.
Terrific. So now we're going to play a short video giving a brief introduction to the High-Level Policy Commission on Getting Asia to Net Zero.
Thank you.
Our window of opportunity to prevent the most catastrophic effects of climate change is quickly closing. According to science, we must slash global emissions in half by 2030 and reduce them to net zero by the middle of the century. What happens in Asia is crucial. Over half the world's emissions come from Asia. But we also know a more sustainable development pathway will bring enormous dividends. According to the World Bank, limiting average global temperatures increases to 1.5 degrees Celsius will add $47 trillion in benefits to the Asia-Pacific economy by 2070. This opportunity is why Asian economies are already stepping up with net zero pledges. But more work is now needed to help governments develop the concrete plans and policies to implement these targets and reduce emissions even faster, ensuring that Asia decarbonizes on time and prospers and thrives during this transition. The eyes of the world are also on Asia. In 2022 and 2023, it will host the G20 summit, and in 2023, the Asia-Pacific Group will host COP28. That is why, to help Asia lead in addressing the global climate crisis, the Asia Society Policy Institute is launching a high-level and independent policy commissions on getting Asia to net zero. By bringing together the region's political leaders, business leaders, financial leaders, and others, the Commission will map out a powerful and coherent regional vision for Asia and a number of key countries to realise net zero emissions, including how climate action can boost the region's economy, trade, interconnectedness, and people's livelihoods. Through research, analysis and engagement, the Commission will identify solutions for confronting barriers to increased ambition and lay out a roadmap for Asia to reap the benefits of greater climate action today.
We look forward to the beginning of this dialogue.
A new journey shared by common goals.
This is a massive opportunity for Asia.
And one that we cannot let pass by.
And with that, I'd like to welcome back our other esteemed members of the High-Level Policy Commission on Getting Asia to Net Zero. So joining me for the panel discussion today alongside Kevin are Dr. Muhamad Chatib Basri, who is the former finance minister of Indonesia, which, as many of you know, is hosting the G20 summit this year. He also, prior to that, served as the chairman of the Indonesia Investment Coordinating Board, also known as BKPM. And also on our panel is Mr. Taro Kono of Japan, who previously served in a number of ministerial positions, both during the Abe as well as the Suga administrations, and is currently still a parliamentarian in the Japanese Diet. So please welcome our commissioners back. And I'd like to start the panel discussion with you, Kevin, just to really get an understanding of your motivation for bringing this group of respected Asian leaders together around this issue of net zero. And I want to ask, in your view, what does a powerful and coherent vision for net zero emissions in Asia look like? And how can the Commission really play a role in realizing this? And I think part of this is also just taking into account some of the recent shifts in our world geopolitically and some of the additional challenges that arise from that, but also some of the opportunities as well.
Well, thank you again, Kate. And thank you very much to Chatib and Taro for joining me in this panel after those inspiring initial remarks from Ban Ki-moon. In terms of your question and what would represent a coherent vision for net zero emissions in Asia, I think there are a couple of points we should underline. The first is, though I'm loath to say this, we should look positively at what the Europeans have done. The Europeans are responsible for a lot of the cumulative greenhouse gas emissions in the atmosphere through their earlier industrialization. But through the voice of Brussels and the voice of the European Commission, the European Union, they have taken a coherent position across all of Europe, certainly the member states, in forging a common target both for 2030 and for 2050. And those of us in Asia who do not have a European Union-like entity to lead us, we need to look at institutions like APEC, like the East Asia Summit and others to begin to build momentum for the major emitting economies of our region to work together to achieve a real target for our part of the world. I think there's a second reason for doing so, and that is we need to not just have a coherent vision in terms of carbon neutrality, working towards a common date for carbon neutrality. India at present is 2070, China is 2060, various other countries, including Japan and the ROK, are 2050, so is Australia. But we need to start pushing towards a common date in order to then drive our various governments to make parallel investments in the renewable energy transformation which must occur. You see, all of our constituents, because we're all politicians here, understand the need for reliable and secure sources of energy, and secondly, for accessible and affordable prices for energy. And so therefore, we need to work together on these practical things. We can't just take out a magic wand and pretend it will all be better in the morning. Both Chatib and Taro and I, we have represented constituencies in our national parliaments, and Taro still does so. And therefore, it's important to be able to answer these questions. Can you deliver us secure energy in the future? Can you deliver us affordable energy in the future? And can you also bring about a sustainable energy future which acts on climate change? And we're required to answer all three of those questions, not just one of them. So I think the investments that we can together make in a coordinated and orchestrated fashion, I think can help in that respect. I think the third and final element of what I would regard as being an integrated vision for Asia is one where we bring together our medium-term ambitions for carbon neutrality for around mid-century with our short-term actions for the decade ahead. You see, again, what politicians tend to do, maybe it's just Australian politicians, I'm not sure, Taro and Chatib, but Australian politicians will often make grand promises about a very distant target in the future, for which in their political careers they may not be held responsible. Maybe that's just our problem. I'm sure you Indonesians and you Japanese are much better than we are. But let me tell you, I've seen this behaviour elsewhere in the world. And so the challenge for us is to gently, firmly, but effectively put pressure on our political peers to say our constituents won't accept that sort of distant future type aspiration in the absence of concrete steps now to build out renewable energy, to fully look at the transition of hydrocarbons, both in the energy sector and in the transport sector and in elsewhere. Let me conclude by saying, as we do our work also as this commission, we're serious about it. So we intend to produce reports on how is India going, for example. India will emerge as one of the major global ematters fairly soon, given its population growth and given where it is in its overall development cycle. And we are supportive of Prime Minister Narendra Modi's announcement that India has already begun to take actions with an integrated plan. But we intend to report on where India is up to. We intend to report on where Indonesia is up to, Chatib, and its aspirations and its achievements. Maybe we'll need to do the same both in relation to Japan, Australia, and whether the Chinese join us in this commission or not, we'll probably need to produce a parallel report on the other big emitting country of our region, which of course is China itself. But the task here is to keep each other honest about what we say, what we do, and where the numbers are. And Kate, let me just conclude my initial remarks in response to your question. Ultimately, as Ban Ki-moon reminded us, there is no plan B because there is no planet B. And the thing I know about our planet, having grown up on a farm myself in rural Australia, is that the planet doesn't lie. Politicians can sometimes lie, but the planet doesn't lie. It is simply a repository of truth. And if we push the planet to breaking point, then the planet speaks very loudly indeed. Back to you, Kate.
Thanks so much for laying out the very clear and coherent framework, and also I think for touching on some of the plans of the Commission. And I would just add to that the Commission also intends to look into some of the pan-regional alignment and what a pan-regional vision looks like for a net zero age, in addition to some of this country-specific work as well. So I'd like to turn now to Dr. Basri Chatib for a bit of an economic perspective. And the idea of how ambitious climate action can really help to enable economic recovery in Asia, especially in the wake of the COVID-19 pandemic. And just highlighting again that Indonesia is hosting the G20 summit this year, focusing on the theme of recover together, recover stronger, of which sustainable energy transition is actually one of the priority issues alongside global health architecture and digital transformation. So Dr. Basri, it would be really great to hear your thoughts on this linkage, and especially what is the opportunity this year for drawing the co-benefits of economic recovery and economic growth together with ambitious climate action. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Kate. First of all, allow me to thank Kevin for having me to join this commission. I fully agree with Ban Ki-moon and also Kevin that this climate change is really a big issue, and we have to work together to address the issue seriously, every country, including Indonesia. And it is a great pleasure, and I'm honored and delighted to join this commission. Now let me try to respond to your questions, Kate. Similar with many countries in the world, Asian economies are now recovering from the pandemic. Yeah, but one thing that become a big issue for many countries, not only in Asia, but also in other countries in the world, is the issue of the inflationary pressures. Yeah, the conflict between Russia and Ukraine. I'm sitting in Jakarta, thousands of kilometers from Ukraine, but we feel the impact through the rising energy prices and also the food prices. But at the same time, one thing that we learned from the pandemic is there is a need to change the strategy into more inclusive. Many, if you look at in the informal sector, women were affected because of the pandemic, because they have to work in the informal sector. And then we also see the risk of the setback of the quality of education, maybe because the online system. Yeah. The issue of the climate. So there is a need for this building back better through the new strategy. Every country in the world, the way I look at it, will put more emphasis on the need more resources for the fiscal, especially with the rising with the increase of the food prices. This will have an impact to the vulnerable groups. Yeah, in Asia, in Africa. Then the biggest questions that we need to answer is how government in various countries, including in Asia and Indonesia, manage to finance this situation. Yeah, under this kind of situation, the way I look at it, we have to combine. We have to look at the issue of development and climate in the one perspective. Because let me be frank and honest with you, as Kevin said, we would like to have this frank discussion in this commission. In many developing countries, climate change is often perceived as a luxury goods, because this is something that probably will happen 30 years from now, 50 years from now. And many emerging economies, including Asia, including Indonesia, we are so busy with the day-to-day problem of poverty, unemployment, poor quality of education. So how to put the perspective to link the climate issue into development? That will be the most important thing. So let me propose with the one policy that could be an alternative for this. We are talking about the recovery from the pandemic, which is one thing that we learned from the pandemic. Investment on health is a very important. Investment is not just health is not just an issue about spending, but it is an investment. At the same time, we need to continue to focus on the what I call the more inclusive economic growth. Then the question is there such thing as a policy that can address the issue of the vulnerable groups, climate change, and at the same time help the government in addressing the fiscal constraint? One of the potential solutions towards it is climate. Why is that? Because let me give an example. In the case of Indonesia, I did that when I was a finance minister back 2013. We adjusted the fuel price by 44% at that time. And I thought that policy was a triple win, because it is good for the climate, it will reduce the demand for fossil fuel, and we use the money for the direct cash transfer to support the vulnerable groups. And the third one, this is good also for the fiscal, because this will help the government to reduce the pressure on the budget deficit. So I would imagine if many countries in the world, including Indonesia, in Asia, there are many countries still have this burden of the fossil fuel subsidy. And if we can reallocate this subsidy into health to support the vulnerable groups, because the effect of the increase of the food prices, to support for education, to provide an access for women, then this policy will be something that not only economically sound, but also politically feasible. Because don't forget, voters will support. So that is why I can see this opportunity for many countries in Asia, including countries like Indonesia, some countries in Africa. It is very unfortunate if we see that the proportion of the fuel subsidy in many countries in the world is even higher than spending on health or even on the R&D. In addition to that, there are various studies shows that investment on the green sector could also promote growth. Yeah, this will also help this recovery of this economy after the pandemic. Yeah, of course, I do understand Kevin raised this issue. We I cannot talk just as sort of like a technocrat. Yeah, we are not living in the empty space. We have to understand about the political reality. Allow me to quote what Jean-Claude Juncker said. We all know what to do. We just don't know how to get re-elected after we've done it. Yeah, and I think this is very important. That is why the issue of this political economy become very important. And that's your second question, Kate, come into the picture about the energy transition, because we are not talking about this, shifting from this one equilibrium into the new equilibrium. The most important thing is the adjustment process. What kind of transition that affordable for many countries in Asia? What kind of transitions that politically feasible? Indonesia, a country who produce, as very similar like Australia, coal, for example. We do understand we committed to, for this to reduce on later on zero coal power, but this can be done in overnight, like Kevin said. There should be a transition. There should be a platform being prepared. At the same time, this kind of policy will need support from the international community as well. The Indonesian government commit to reduce the 29% of the emission below the BAU, but with the support of the international community will become about 41%. So that is why the role of this commission become very important, because we can discuss the global issue. We try to find the solutions, including the financing, the innovative financing. And I can see, to respond the last of your questions, Kate, and I can see the opportunities here. I remember back on to 2008 when Indonesia participated on the leaders in the G20. I was a Sherpa for President Yudhoyono at that time. Yeah, it was Australia sort of like invited us to join the leaders G20 at that time. And then I remember the G20 was very effective at that time because we had a common problem for the global financial crisis. Now I can see the opportunities. We are facing the global problem as well about this climate issue. And I do believe that we can work together. We can take these opportunities. Every country will work together. And the way I look at the increase of the energy prices is an opportunity actually to shift the energy from fossil fuel into the renewable energy. So I do hope we can work together to address this issue. And then exactly like Kevin said, before in the mid of this century, we are able to achieve this net zero emission. Thank you very much.
Good.
Thank you so much, Dr. Basri, for those very valuable remarks. And I think a couple of points stood out to me. I think, first of all, just this idea, there's not a false dichotomy between climate and so many of these other issues, especially protecting vulnerable populations, and that there really is strong interlinkages between them, and they must go hand in hand in terms of the response measures, and that doing so can really benefit all. And I think the second piece as well is this whole piece about how to unlock some of the resources, especially that developing economies in Asia will need from a finance perspective, from a capacity perspective, from a technology perspective, in order to decarbonize on time, and really how the Commission can play a role in helping to unlock some of those pieces, because they'll be much needed in order to help Asia decarbonize on time and prosper. Obviously, there are a lot of benefits to be had, but that takes a lot of investment as well. With that, I think this is a good segue to turn to Mr. Taro Kono for another question, which is that a key challenge for the Commission will be showing the political resolve to achieve net zero across Asia and in all of the countries that are the focus of the Commission within Asia. And I'd love to hear your thoughts on some of the key strategies for overcoming the political barriers to achieving net zero in Asia, perhaps drawing on some of your own experience in Japan and elsewhere.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And thank you, Kevin, for inviting me to this commission. This is very important because, as you just said, there's no planet B. So we have to go on with the plan A, and we have to achieve net zero. Well, Asia is important because more than half of emissions are coming from Asia, and we are behind Europe. I think we have to admit. There are very different stage of economic development among us. We have very different history of economy. In some country, we have free market economy. Some are more regulated. And some country has cheap coal. So they always ask, why can they use cheap resource to develop their economy? And often from small countries, whatever they do can be overshadowed by what China and India do. So why do they have to put more effort before China, India move ahead? So there are a lot of obstacles that we need to go over. But as Dr. Chatib said, well, the crisis also present opportunity. Well, the prices of oil and gas are going up, and Japan, where we import every energy resources, our trade deficit is becoming huge. We are bleeding every day. But it is a very good incentive for us to promote renewable energy. If we switch to renewable, we don't have to purchase foreign energy sources. So there is more incentive to invest in renewable. At the same time, all the Asian people are feeling impact of climate change. Typhoons and cyclones are getting stronger and stronger every year. During the rainy season, we are experiencing heavier rain and more flood in Asia. And the cost of disaster recovery is getting big and big. So investing now for climate change, to stop the climate change, would actually save a lot of cost. And those money we may have to put in the disaster management can be transferred to education or research and development or other things. And in order for small towns or small village to install renewable energy, that means investment will circulate in their local economy. Like even in Japan, small towns near Tokyo, they pay electricity bill to TEPCO, Tokyo Electric Power. That Tokyo suck up all the money from the local economy. But if they invest in renewable now, if they install photovoltaic or wind or small hydro, the money they invest in the renewable will circulate in the local economy, and that would enhance their capability. And now we have seen emerging electric vehicle industries all over the world. It's the automobile is not by Japan, US, or Europe. China could build an electric vehicle. India could do that. Any country. We have seen Sony television. When we are doing analog television, Sony technology was really ahead and no one can catch up with them. But when it moved to liquid crystal, anyone can build a television. So same thing is happening in automobile industry. When we are building a gasoline engine, maybe General Motors and Toyota or Volkswagen, they are way ahead. But for electric vehicle, anyone with battery and motor could build an electric vehicle. So any Asian country could grow new industry with renewable and EVs. So actually investing in climate change would create new industry in Asian countries. And even Japan, well, I have to admit, Japan has been lagging behind in carbon neutral. But the previous Prime Minister, Suga, made an announcement that by 2050, we will reach carbon neutral. So I think it is good time to give a big push to Asia so that we can start investing in climate change and we can support each other. In Europe, they have established EU, and European integration started with steel and coal. My vision is if we can build a super grid in Asia, if we can connect wind power in Mongolia to water hydro in Himalaya, solar power in Saudi Arabia to geothermal in Japan, if we can build Asia's super grid, it would enhance interdependence and integration of Asia. I think that'll be the first step towards new, stable and peaceful and prosperous Asia. So there's all reason for us to take leadership to counter climate change. So this commission is particularly important because there are a very wide range of Asian economy, and we all have a different political obstacle, but we can help each other to go over those obstacles together, and we can catch up with Europe or North America soon. So thank you very much, and I'm very much looking forward to working this commission.
Thanks very much for that, Mr. Kono. And I think I'd like to end by posing the same question to the three of you, and perhaps start by throwing it back to you, Mr. Kono, which is, what are the opportunities you see in this upcoming year in 2022 specifically for Asian leadership on climate action in the lead up to COP27 and otherwise?
Well, thank you very much. I think this higher price for energy, I think all the Asian country, all the Asian leaders are feeling the heat. So there is a very big incentive for us to now turning to the renewable. And new industry is moving up. China has announced a new EV. Toyota is even turning to EV. Tesla, as always, introducing new models. So it's a very good timing because we see a lot of changes from the past. So we have G20 and the COP in Asia. So this is good time for the Asian leaders to get together and talk about the climate change.
Thanks so much for that. Dr. Basri, your thoughts?
I would like to echo what Taro said. I think the biggest issue that many countries in Asia are facing now, the issue of the energy prices now, and also the food prices. And with the very high energy prices, I think this is the right time to shift the investment from the fossil fuel into the renewable one. Yeah, there is no better time than what is we are facing now, because the energy price is so huge, exactly like Taro said. In addition to that, various studies shows that investment on green sector could promote growth, and many Asian countries definitely need stronger economic recovery post the pandemic. So that is why I can see the opportunities under this kind of situation. And last but not least, the cooperation, the commitment have been made during the COP in Glasgow, for example, the G20 meeting in Jakarta, and next year in India, will provide a sort of like a chance and opportunities to discuss also about the importance of financing. Even Secretary Yellen, I read in the media, already stated that the Bretton Woods institution are not ready for the multifaceted crisis. We need something really big to address various crises, including to address the issue of climate. So I can see, that we can work together to address the issue of this climate change, and exactly like what Kevin said, hopefully before in the middle of this century, we could achieve the target of net zero emission.
Thanks so much for those valuable thoughts. And finally, over to you, Kevin, for your thoughts and any other concluding thoughts you have on this.
Yeah, thanks again, Kate. It's been such a good opportunity to be with my two colleagues from Indonesia and Japan. And it's an honor to actually work with you on this and to think creatively and constructively about what the hell we do. And I am really impressed by the thoughts you've both put on the table. We all know, as members of this region, that the eyes of the world are going to be on us with the G20 being hosted in Jakarta in 2022, in Delhi in 2023, COP28 in 2023 will be in the Emirates. So the eyes of the world at one level or another are going to be on the obvious fact that our part of the world will determine the planet's future now. That's kind of where it's up to. And much as many people would like to run away from that, that's kind of where we are. The second point is, internationally, what we agreed in Glasgow in the Climate Pact was that all countries would revisit and strengthen their nationally determined contributions and submit their long-term strategies. There's a lot of undone work which remains undone from Glasgow. It gives our political leaders an opportunity now to do so. Thirdly, I'm really taken by what Chatib and Taro had to say about the fact that the spike in global energy prices provides us with a unique historical opportunity to engineer the transformation now, and for two sets of reasons. One is price and relative price. As we know, hydrocarbon prices going through the roof for a whole range of reasons. And secondly, as we know over the last decade, the renewable energy price coming down to historic lows. So we actually have achieved crossover in a significant way. And furthermore, it's not just price, it's now energy security. Renewable energy is local energy, by and large, not always, but by and large, it can be local energy, whether it's through solar, whether it's through wind, whether it's through water, wave, or through hydro or other sources. And so that therefore creates the economic opportunities which Taro referred to as well. If I see a future which I share in his vision, it's local renewable energy, and then the rebirth of local boutique manufacturing, 3D printing in localities powered by local renewables. This actually represents a move away from mass production through tailored production to consumers in localities. It also reduces, by the way, some transport costs and transport fuel consumption. And the last thing I think is worthy of further reflection is what Taro said about his big vision, which is how do we create a pan-Asian energy market for renewables? We'll have to do a little bit of work, Taro, on connectivity to make sure our grids are appropriately linked up. But you can conceive of a vision for the future, which has hydro from the Himalayas, which has wind in many parts of the wider region. You could turn all of Central Australia into one giant solar farm for most of Asia, if you wanted to. There's plenty of real estate there, let me tell you. And let me tell you, there's a lot of sun. I've been out there recently. There's a lot of sun. So there are ways to think this through, which I think are creative. And that's my concluding point, Kate. Right now, when we've got a growth-challenged world, and bearing in mind what Janet Yellen said, it provides us with an opportunity to reimagine how we kickstart global growth again with a major global set of investments into renewables in order to generate growth, new jobs, and to transform the planet in a sustainable fashion in terms of long-term climate as well. And this may be the best single investment that the Bretton Woods institutions ever make. Back to you, Kate, to close us out.
Thanks so much. And in the interest of time, we'll have to wrap up, but a lot of really phenomenal and interesting ideas to build on going forward. So thank you so much to all of our esteemed speakers, also to everyone for tuning in to join us here for today's event. We invite all of you to follow the Commission's work going forward this year, especially in the lead up to COP27 and beyond that, hopefully as well, and to visit our new website at asiasociety.org/netzero. And I hope you all have a nice evening or a lovely day, depending on where you are in the world. Thank you so much and take care.
Thank you very much. All the best.
Thank you very much.